This video is going to do a quick overview and demo of the installation of keptn in our cluster, going over the onboarding of the application, showing how we do keptn send events, reviewing the information in keptn bridge, and then tearing down our environment. Our application is a multi-microservice application made up of a front end, series of back-end services, which each with embedded databases. All of the code is compiled, stored up on Docker Hub. All the source code can be found up in GitHub. So what we're going to do is set up a Bastion host up into our AWS environment, and from there we're going to sync in our keptn order setup repo, which contains all the scripts to provision everything. Then we will provision our cluster. We're going to install keptn. We're going to install the Dynatrace one-agent operator. We're going to create and onboard an application, which is going to bring in manifest files and code from our repos. We're going to send our artifact events, which are going to bring in our images from Docker Hub. Then that's going to deploy our application into a multi-environment of dev, staging, and production. Then we're going to review things on keptn bridge. Then we're also going to monitor things in Slack and Microsoft Teams. The particular environment is set up with a keptn uniform file with a series of just basic services, the GitHub, Helm, Microsoft Teams, JMeter, as well as PeterMeter, which is configured with data sources of Dynatrace and Prometheus. So what our cluster itself, as we provision it, will be set up with in Kubernetes on Amazon EKS. A series of namespaces will be built, including Dynatrace, the keptn, which will contain a series of keptn services, and then our application will be created into a production, staging, and dev, each with the multiple microservices that make up the app. One detail is once the project is onboarded, what will happen inside of the keptn orders repo, which we'll demo, will be a series of files. Each service will have the same structure, but essentially the application has a JMeter folder with scripts, perf spec file, the actual underlying code files, which keptn doesn't use but are needed to actually build the Docker container. And then within the keptn orders project that gets generated, there will be a branch for each of our environments, dev branch, staging branch, production branch, and it basically has a structure of Helm charts, value files, and the generated Helm charts that are used as part of deploying the service. What will also happen with keptn inside of Dynatrace, it will automatically build problem notification webhooks so that as problems are detected by the Dynatrace tool, the Dynatrace service will pick this up, and then as we have tools like the keptn Slack service, those problem notifications will show up in our Slack service. Also, within Dynatrace, the product, it has a feature for using auto-tagging rules, picking up things like the Kubernetes namespace, so that when the application shows up in Dynatrace, each of the environments and services in the application will have metadata tags that we can use for filtering and using API calls. Then built into the application itself, depends on the version, which is all in the README file, you will be able to see issues that show up, whether it's an N+1 problem. We have other scenarios where there's performance problems and response time problems. Hi, I'm going to walk you through how to set up the Bastion host that we will use for the keptn order setup on Amazon. So as you can see, there is an AWS README file with instructions for doing this. It assumes you already have the CLI configured so that you can run some of these automation scripts. I'm going to take this script here, and as you notice, you need to modify your key that's already set up on Amazon, as well as give a prefix, which will then be used, as you can see, in various places to automatically name this script. So I already have this filled in here with my information, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy this set of scripts and come over to my terminal and let it run. And you can see this will execute. It will take a minute or so for this to take place. And so you can see here, it's all initiated into through the CLI. So now if we go back to our management console, we look at EC2. In my case, I am using the US East region. If I look at my instances here, I can see that my Bastion host is running. And one thing to point out, the setup script does is it creates a security group here automatically with the same sort of preface name and the group. And what it's did there is I've opened up 2 ports. One allow me to SSH in, and one you'll see later when we do the Captain Bridge, we come over port 80. And so we will just go back to our instances, and we will probably see that they are created now. Now this is my host that's running, so now I can just basically come in here and connect. So here I can just copy to my instance and go ahead and connect to it. And now I have to be in my folder where I actually have my PEM file. And if you notice here, you do pass in a PEM file. This needs to be generated and located on your machine. So now that I have that, I am connected in. And if we go back to our instructions here, the next step after creation is that we're going to clone the setup repository here. And what's nice about this VM, it automatically has Git. So now we can clone that, we switch into our directory, and now we can move on to the next set of scripts. So first thing we do is we run a setup script that comes with this clone repo. And if you notice, if you don't pass an argument, it will prompt you that you need to do so. And since we're doing EKS, we'll do EKS. And now we're in the menu, and what we want to do here is install our prerequisite tools. So I'm going to go ahead and choose option number 1. And this is giving me just a little warning of the types of things it's going to do. It's going to install a series of tools and some specific Amazon tools. And you can see these are the versions that are programmed in the script. We can let it go ahead and do it. This will take not much time at all to execute, and we can kind of monitor these logs. So you can see we've installed this hub utility. It's in the process of installing JQ, which is a JSON query tool. Let this chug along. And while this is running, you can see all the scripts in the source code repo. We go back to Captain Order setup. You can see in this case is the install prerequisite tools, and this is the little warning that we saw, and it goes through and runs a series of commands just to automate running these things. Then when we get to a specific implementation like EKS, there are specific tools that we need for EKS. In this case statement, we have AKS is Azure, down here GKE is Google. So this same script just has a little logic to install various tools depending on which platform you're deploying to. So if we go back to our install script, you can see it's been doing quite a bit of work. At the end, it does print out that everything did get installed okay. And if you notice here, now I need to initialize my CLI. So I need to paste in my access keys. I'm going to pause the video so I can type in my secrets here. Once I enter in my credentials, I'm actually authenticated. All my prerequisite tools are set up. You can also run the validate prerequisite tool menu, which will also just kind of ensure that everything is set up properly. Now we're going to move on to our enter installation script inputs. So we're going to come in here, choose number 2, and this is going to prompt us for a series of choices. So I'm just going to show you what these are, and you can see we need to enter in our Dynatrace host information, our API and PAS token through our instructions, in the README for how to get these values. You need to have your username, your access token, and Git, because we're going to be setting this up in a Git organization with your ID. And this is actually the field for the organization name. And then you're going to use because the cluster is going to be created with this information. So just like the Bastion host, we're going to use your last name as sort of the prefix. And we're going to pick our region and our domain, which is unique to AWS. And then this will ask you to confirm it. We'll do yes. And then all the information you can see once you do this credentials is stored inside of this creds JSON file. So if I get out of this, and if we just look at that file, you can see it's a file behind the scenes that will contain this information. Since I didn't fill any values, these are still with the placeholders, but this will be updated with your information that you need. Okay, I've paused the video and restarted it. So in my case, I've now entered in all my values, and I'm going to now move on to step 3, which is provision my cluster. So I'm going to choose number 3. It's going to give me just a confirmation page, so you can see it used my preface with my last name, using my region. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And what this is doing is calling a utility, and we'll look at the code real quick. We'll go back to the code, and when we've done provision infrastructure, what's happened here is based on your deployment type, in my case EKS, it's actually calling another script, provision EKS. So if we look inside of provision EKS here, you can see it's actually using this utility that got installed with those prerequisite tools called EKS CTL, which is just a utility that will, in one command, build our cluster. So if we go out to our console for AWS, we can come in here, look at our cloud formation, and what that utility does, which is very handy, is it actually provisioned a cloud formation script and is creating our cluster. So we can then monitor the progress of all the activities, and there's quite a bit that happened behind the scenes in making Kubernetes clusters, from gateways to virtual private networks, load balancers, gateways, the actual underlying node itself. So this will take several minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and then we'll pick it up when it's complete. Okay, now that our cluster is complete, you can see it's completed the work here. These are all output from that CLI tool, and what it's done is given us my script gives you a timestamp, so you can see it took about 14 minutes to create this. And if we look over in the AWS side, we can see two CloudFormation scripts, one for the node group, one for the cluster. Both are complete. And now if we go over to our services, look at EKS, we can see that our cluster has been created. And so these are kind of the various components that got built with it. Now we can move on to our next step, which is installing keptn. So here we're going to pick option 4 from our menu. And this again is going to give us just a little heads up about that it's installing 040. We can go ahead